As I was saying, if you've never been here before, welcome to the live stream. Like to keep these things very, very interactive. So, please leave messages in the chat. I will respond to people down there. Today we got a lot of different stuff to talk about. We're going to talk about Marvel power scaling. The new episode of Moon Knight kind of went a little crazy. If you've seen it, if you haven't seen it, there's going to be spoilers. So if you care about that, then, leave and come back later. Before we get into it, follow me on Twitter, yada, yada, yada. But we got a lot to talk about. Also, random story. You can see this mark on my throat, and I have a mark on my face here as well. I was cooking some steak yesterday, and some oil splashed on me, and now, I got these little burns. It sucks. So if my face is like looking shiny, as you can see, I have some ointment on there trying to reduce the effects of said hot oil that splashed on my face. But anyway, so let's talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe scaling. I gave you enough time to get on out of here. In this episode, Khonshu, first of all, I was kind of floored by his initial little bit of tomfoolery, where he had moved the moon to create a partial solar eclipse, which alerted the other gods of his presence, and essentially he called a meeting of the Ennead together, which in and of itself is already like a super impressive feat. If you go on the Versus Battle Wiki and take a look at other similar feats of moving the moon, they're anywhere from like large planetary, somewhere around that range, which is already crazy impressive. Let me actually pull up my tier list just so I can have that up as reference. But that in and of itself would put him in like Elite Avenger to Celestial tier, maybe, something like that. On my tier list specifically. That was impressive in and of itself. And then after that, obviously at the end of the episode, he's able to essentially move the entire Milky Way galaxy, rotate it to the positioning where all the stars were 2,000 years ago, which is an absolutely insane feat. Obviously, we don't have any sort of calculation for that currently. I don't really know of a feat that's like comparable to this in fiction that maybe we could get like a barometer to see really how impressive that feat is. But obviously, power on a scale that we hadn't really seen, like explicitly within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Let me see if this is already on YouTube. It is. So let's do a little work, a little magic here. I'm going to try not to get DMCA'd, but I mean, this is just on YouTube currently, as you can see. So I'm going to like shake it a little bit so I don't get screwed. But essentially, he's moving all of the stars, the visible stars from Earth, and then holds them there, and then lets go, and then they eventually revert back to where they were. And again, sort of on a scale that we've never explicitly seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, other like comparable feats, there aren't really any other comparable feats. Like, Thanos says he can tear the universe down to its atoms. I think obviously that's a more impressive feat. Alioth is able to eat entire universes. Dormammu is like a multiversal being which absorbs multiple universes. But just like blatant feats that we've seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Ego's expansion is probably the closest thing, and that's not anywhere near Khonshu's feat. Of course, there are various counter arguments that you can make to this. multiple people have asserted that it was simply an illusion, which I think is a little bit goofy to say, especially based on the fact that if it was an illusion, then he wouldn't need to do the whole rewind thing. He could just be like, bam, here's the night sky from that evening. But the character explicitly states in the episode that he can turn back the night sky.
I can turn back the night sky.
I think illusion arguments are kind of bad. One, because the other gods already told him not to meddle with the sky anymore. As in, don't do what you did earlier today, which is cause a solar eclipse. They told him don't do that. They had warned him, if you do this, then we will be forced to imprison you. That was sort of their warning. And if he wanted to avoid imprisonment, then of course Khonshu would simply do a localized illusion, if he has illusion powers, to avoid that. But let's take a look at some more evidence that this is a legitimate feat. This is a statement from Marvel.com. With the realization that Marc is right, Khonshu sends the other gods a signal that they can't ignore. In broad daylight, Khonshu uses his power to trigger a sudden eclipse all over Cairo. So this is just blatantly saying that he used his power to cause an eclipse, i.e., block the sun. This is the specific statement talking about the feat. Suddenly, Stephen is enveloped in his Mr. Knight suit. As the god and his avatar reach toward the moon, the starscape suddenly changes as thousands of Egyptian nights cycle across the large canvas of ever-changing stars. So just essentially relaying us the same information. So that's not, that useful, but still interesting to note that the starscape changes. So, with that being said, I don't think it's an illusion. One, because the character would want to avoid being sealed away. And two, because he literally says he can turn back the night sky. That's just a blatant statement from the character, and then he does it on screen. So I think to argue otherwise would sort of be a headcanon that you would sort of have to jump through more hoops to say it was an illusion rather than an actual feat. And then I also saw another argument. I guess it wasn't an argument, just people complaining that like the Avengers didn't pull up because the stars were changing. And obviously we know that everyone else had seen this happen. We get different POVs. The entire city of Cairo sees it, and basically all of Egypt sees it. The gods see it, etc., etc. Wherever the gods are, we know for a fact that they're scattered across the planet, right? This was stated earlier in the episode as well. So once they went back through their portals, they went to their different places throughout the Earth, and they all saw it. So it was a planet-wide phenomenon. But the big problem with, like, why didn't other people show up is, well, one, it's sort of like a self-contained story, and two, nobody would have known where the origin of this was happening. It was just all the entire sky is moving. So, yeah. And I guess the only other argument would be that it was like time manipulation, but Khonshu has never shown to have that ability. If Khonshu did have time manipulation within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, then a lot of his problems would be easily resolved by manipulating time, i.e. preventing Harrow from even getting the Scarab in the first place, among, a million other different things. So I don't think it was time manipulation. Again, that's more headcanon. He says, I can just turn the sky. I can move the sky. So with that all being said, I think it's a pretty blatant feat, and saying otherwise without more information is, I don't know, kind of weird. So if we take a look at the updated tier list, semi-updated, Khonshu, just in overall outright power, is going to be up here. In terms of would he actually win a fight against all these people below him, some yes, some no, but just to give you guys a feel of total power. Now, this tier list is set up in a way where it's typically going to be, if you beat another character, they're below you. This isn't just who's the strongest, right? Obviously, Kang himself, he's just a regular guy, so he would be way down on the tier list if we're just talking about how much power he has. But his specific abilities, his hacks, his equipment make him at the top of the tier list. Now, Dormammu himself is a multiversal being. There are multiple universes contained within his dark dimension. That's his power level. Alioth, that's his power level. Thanos, that's his power level, assuming he can actually tear the universe down to its atoms. And then Khonshu's power level would be Galaxy Plus. Obviously, Scarlet Witch's power level is not on the same level as Thanos, Four Stone Thanos, or Isan, or any of the Celestials that can create stars. But she's on there due to her hacks. That's why she's so high. Same with Doctor Strange with the Time Stone. So most characters, it's power levels, but a lot of characters, like a decent amount, it's going to be hacks abilities. So just to clarify there, this power we're talking about for Khonshu is specifically his ability to move these amount of stars. And again, you have to consider the fact that he was nerfed as well, so the possibility of him moving up is definitely there, or even moving down. Right now we need more information, but as I see it, as it stands within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, after this first episode, my guy is way, way high on the tier list. We're just talking pure power. Not to mention the fact that he's sort of like an incorporeal being to an extent. He can reveal himself to his avatar, but he's limited in what he's capable of doing, which is why he needed Steven's help. As we learn in episode 2, due to his banishment, he's only really able to act through his avatar, right? Which is why he needed Steven to do the whole thing. If he was at full power, then he could have just done it himself. But in this sort of nerf state, he can only affect the real world to the point where he can, like, do a gust of wind or knock some shit over. So he's weak in that regard. But, you know, we're talking about what his pure power could be. People asking where Moon Knight is. It's really hard to figure out where Moon Knight's gonna end up. I think here for now is probably like a good guesstimation. Again, this is not where Moon Knight is going to end up being on the tier list. He could end up being higher. I think based on like narrative and how they're showing Moon Knight's feats, I think he's probably going to be more akin to super soldiers up here in like low tier god, peak super soldier, or Spider-Man tier. I think that's probably where he's going to end up, but right now he's like wall level. So he would be above normal humans obviously, but be below someone like Luke Cage. So this is just kind of a placeholder. I can't really give you guys an accurate power scale for Moon Knight. Right now we just don't have enough information. I think based on what we've seen, he could definitely end up being up here in the Spider-Man tier list, or in the Spider-Man tier, just below like Age of Ultron, Thor, and shit like that in Black Panther's tier. So yeah, probably would be something like this if I had to guess what we're going to be at the end of the series. But for now, I just have him here because he's not, from what we've seen, he's not strong enough to hurt Luke Cage. Luke Cage wouldn't be able to kill him either based on his insane regeneration. So yeah, this is not very helpful to you guys because we just don't have enough information. Once the show's over and I'm able to pull all relevant information together, calculations, all that, statements, everything, I'll be able to give you an accurate placement for both Khonshu and his avatar. And I was talking earlier, just in Discord, to other people about what does this mean for the gods moving forward in the MCU. Obviously the Ennead are extremely powerful, far more powerful than the Aesir from what we've seen thus far. So are the Aesir going to get a real godlike amp? Are we going to really figure out how powerful the Aesir are at the top level in the next Thor movie? Because we already know that the Greek pantheon are going to be in it. Zeus is going to be in it. We know Gore the God Butcher is going to be in it. And it's rumored that Bast is going to be in it. And if you've seen my most recent video, then you know that Bast is also one of the Ennead. So she is related to Khonshu and Osiris, Tefnut, etc., all the other ones. So, are the Aesir going to get some sort of power boost to put them on this same like godlike level? Because the MC was sort of like waffling early on, like the Aesir weren't gods, they're actually just advanced alien species, but it's pretty explicit that the Ennead are like godlike beings. Like Khonshu is the god, the moon god. Thor is the god of thunder in name, but does he actually control the like fundamental aspect of thunder, lightning itself? From what we've seen, the answer to that is maybe. We're not really sure. So if Zeus shows up and he is going to be like a legitimate god, a legitimate deity, like we've seen out of Khonshu, and if Bast is in it, maybe Gore kills Zeus. Maybe Gore kills Bast. Maybe that ends up being why maybe we're not going to get any more Black Panthers because the Panther goddess gets killed by Gore. Who knows? But I think they're going to lean more into this expansive power. I think early on they were a little worried about making things so crazy over the top powerful like they are in the comic books, but I think now they're sort of saying people like it. So yeah, I think that's something they definitely could do, and I think Thor and Jane Foster, Thor, Odin, even maybe Prime Odin, etc., could get these sort of like massive godlike amps. And I think we've already kind of seen that with like Surtur and how he was just able to obliterate Asgard and things like that. We've seen Celestials that can just make stars out of, the elements around them, surrounding them. We've seen Eliath can just literally eat entire timelines and stuff like that. So we could be getting into more godlike territory. And in that case, then maybe the Aesir will be adjacent to the Ennead.